ready to get deep into the world of narcissism.
Always.
Well, today we're diving into an article called Narcissistic Behaviour and its impact on relationships. It's from That's Life 24/7.
Interesting.
We'll be focusing on those manipulation tactics and the impact this type of behavior can have on families.
For sure.
And we'll even be looking at some examples of famous narcissists throughout history.
Okay, great. I mean, I think we hear that term narcissist
Yeah.
thrown around pretty loosely sometimes.
Yeah.
But this deep dive will really give everyone a good grasp on the nuances
Yeah, I think so.
of narcissistic behavior.
So this article starts off by defining narcissism,
Okay.
and it emphasizes that feeling of superiority and that constant craving for admiration
Right.
that narcissists seem to always have.
And that's where it gets really interesting because it's not just about having healthy self-esteem, which we all need, right? But it's about a much deeper psychological need. It's like they need to constantly validate a fragile sense of self.
Interesting.
Like they're always looking outward for validation
Okay.
because something is missing internally.
That makes sense. So this article gets into
Yes.
some of the different types of narcissism.
Okay.
And it's not always as in your face as you might think.
Right.
The article breaks it down into 3 types. We've got grandiose, vulnerable, and covert.
Got it.
So first, you've got those grandiose narcissists.
Right.
These are the people who are very open
Yeah.
about their supposed greatness and achievements and all that.
So like that stereotypical CEO,
Yeah.
you know, who takes all the credit when things go well, but never takes responsibility when things go wrong.
Exactly.
They can be super charming at first,
Right.
but it's all a facade.
A facade, yeah.
Just covering up their deep insecurity
Right.
underneath it all.
Okay, so then we have the vulnerable narcissists.
Right.
And they use a different approach.
Right.
They're always playing the victim
Okay.
to get sympathy and reassurance from others.
So they're like constantly complaining about being misunderstood
Yeah.
and overly sensitive to any criticism.
Exactly.
They're trying to get attention and validation,
Right.
but never want to take responsibility for their actions.
Okay, that makes sense. And then there's the covert narcissists.
Okay.
These are the trickiest ones to spot
Oh, wow.
because they might seem shy or unassuming,
Right.
but they're still looking for attention, just in more subtle ways.
Okay.
Like, think of that friend who's always putting others down,
Oh, yeah.
but disguising it as a compliment.
Yeah, I know the type.
Right.
Yeah.
They might not brag openly,
Okay.
but they still want to feel superior to everyone else.
Look at it.
So now, let's get to the heart
Yeah.
of what makes a narcissist tick.
Okay.
This article pinpoints 3 main traits
Wow.
of narcissists. They have a belief in their own specialness,
Okay.
they manipulate others for their own personal gain, and they really lack empathy.
Right, and that lack of empathy can be really damaging.
It is, yeah.
Because they truly believe in their own specialness,
Right.
which allows them to use others without any remorse.
Right.
It's almost like they're on a different level
Yeah.
and can easily disregard how their actions affect other people.
So how does this all play out in relationships?
Well,
This article talks about how partners of narcissists
Yeah.
often feel very alone and uncared for.
right, because for a narcissist,
Yeah.
the world really does revolve around them.
Right?
It's like they literally don't have the capacity to understand or
Yeah.
even care about other people's feelings.
Interesting. So the article then goes back
Yeah.
to the root of it all.
Okay.
You know, how does someone actually become a narcissist?
Right.
It seems that childhood experiences
Yeah.
really play a big role. Like, too much praise can inflate a child's ego, while neglect can lead to a sense of inadequacy
Right.
that they try to overcompensate for later.
Yeah, it's like a pendulum swinging between two extremes.
Yeah.
Either they were constantly put on a pedestal
Right.
and never learned to deal with any criticism, or they
Sure.
were overlooked
Right.
and now desperately crave validation.
Yeah. And the article also brings up parental expectations.
Okay.
I mean, I think we all feel that pressure to live up to our parents' expectations.
For sure.
But for someone with narcissistic tendencies,
Yeah.
it can really damage their self-esteem.
Got it.
So they're constantly trying to prove themselves worthy of love and attention.
Yeah, it's a constant struggle for them.
And on top of that, we can't forget about all of the societal influences that we're all exposed to these days.
Right.
Social media and this culture of individualism
Yes.
definitely don't help.
No, they just amplify
Yeah.
those tendencies.
They really do.
Yeah.
It's like adding fuel to the fire.
Exactly.
So this makes you wonder, is it nature or nurture?
Interesting.
the article mentions that there could be a genetic predisposition to narcissism, like a family history of it, or certain personality traits that make you more susceptible to it.
I would say it's most likely a combination of both, you know?
Right.
Your genes might lay the groundwork.
Yeah.
But those early childhood experiences and your environment really determine how those traits manifest.
Okay, so we've gone over the basics.
Yes. Yeah.
But now let's look at
right.
how narcissism can play out in romantic relationships.
For sure.
One early warning sign the article mentions is that excessive self-centeredness.
Right.
Like when every conversation always comes back to them.
Yeah, it's like they have this gravitational pull that just sucks all the attention toward them. It's less about connection and more about feeding their ego.
It is, yeah. And then there's that classic idealization and devaluation cycle.
Right, that push and pull that keeps you off balance.
So it's like they shower you with affection at first.
Yes.
Almost like they're putting you on a pedestal. But then they inevitably start criticizing and devaluing you.
Right. At first they build you up to feed their ego.
Exactly.
But no one can keep up with those unrealistic expectations.
Right.
So when you inevitably fall short, the devaluation begins.
It is a cycle. And we can't forget that need for admiration.
Yes.
This article says that this can make the partner feel inadequate.
Right.
Like they're constantly trying to prove themselves, but never feeling good enough.
And they never will be good enough because it's a bottomless pit.
Right.
No amount of praise or validation will ever be enough.
Wow.
They always need more, you know?
Yeah. And this is where things take a bit of a dark turn. The article talks about these manipulation tactics that narcissists often use, like gaslighting, the silent treatment, and even explosive anger.
So with gaslighting, you're constantly being told your feelings are wrong, that you're overreacting or that you're imagining things.
Yeah, it can make you feel crazy.
It really can. You start to question your own reality.
Right. And the silent treatment, that's just classic, right?
Yeah.
They withdraw affection and communication as a way to punish their partner.
And it's all about control. They're creating uncertainty and insecurity to get you to give in to their demands.
It is all about control. And then when these tactics don't work, there's the explosive anger.
Right. Which is just another way to regain control.
Right.
It can be terrifying to witness, you know?
It can.
And it creates this environment where you're always walking on eggshells.
You really do.
Yeah.
So you've painted a pretty bleak picture here.
Yeah.
What happens in the long run? What are the lasting effects of these types of relationships?
That's what we're going to get into next.
Okay, well, let's take a break and then we'll come back and continue this discussion.
All right. So we've seen how damaging this can be, but the good news is that this article doesn't just leave you hanging. It gives you some advice on how to cope if you're in a relationship with a narcissist.
Okay, so what does it say?
Well, the first and most important step is setting boundaries.
Right.
Now, that sounds simple enough,
Yeah.
but you really have to communicate your limits clearly and firmly. And that can be really difficult with a narcissist.
It can.
Because they're used to getting their way.
Yeah, they are.
It takes a lot of courage to stand up to them because they will push back and guilt trip you and even try to escalate the situation.
So those boundaries are really important to protect yourself.
They're essential for protecting your emotional well-being.
Makes sense.
It's like a shield, you know,
right,
to protect you from their manipulation.
So boundaries are important. What else?
Well, the article also strongly recommends seeking professional help.
I think that's such good advice in these situations.
It can be really helpful to talk to a therapist who can give you the tools and strategies to deal with the emotional turmoil of this type of relationship.
Exactly.
It gives you a safe and supportive space to process everything.
It does.
And develop a plan to either navigate the relationship or even safely leave it.
And we can't forget about support from friends and family, too.
Right. They're like your lifeline.
They are. Sometimes you just need that outside perspective.
You do.
To remind you that your feelings are valid.
Exactly. They can help you see things more clearly and remind you of your worth and be there for you when you need it.
They can. What else does the article say?
Well, it also stresses the importance of self-care.
Okay.
You know, taking care of your emotional well-being.
Right.
Do things you enjoy that help you relax and reconnect with yourself.
That's so important. So we have setting boundaries,
yes,
seeking therapy, and prioritizing self-care.
Right. Those are the foundations for coping.
Yeah.
But there are a few other tips.
Oh, okay. Like what?
Well, one I found interesting is called gray rocking.
Okay.
Have you heard of this?
I don't think so.
Basically, you limit your emotional response to the narcissist's provocations.
Interesting.
So you become very neutral.
Okay.
Almost like a gray rock.
I see.
You're not giving them the reaction or the emotional fuel that they crave.
Oh, so you're taking away their power.
Exactly.
Okay, that's a good one.
And the article also emphasizes that you always have the option to walk away. It sounds obvious, but sometimes we forget that we have a choice.
Yeah.
If the relationship is toxic, it might be the best thing to do for your own well-being.
It might be. And that is a good reminder.
Yeah.
Because sometimes we stay in situations longer.
We do.
Than we should.
Right, we get stuck. And finally, the article says you need to learn to recognize the manipulation tactics.
Right.
The more you understand those, the better you can protect yourself.
Okay, so knowledge is power.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've covered a lot.
We have.
We've defined narcissism. We've looked at the origins. We've really explored the impact it has on relationships.
Yes.
And we've also talked about coping strategies.
Right.
But let's talk about the long-term effects now.
Okay.
How do these experiences shape a person going forward?
That's an important question. And the article says the long-term effects of this can be pretty significant.
Okay.
You know, we've talked about mental health issues like anxiety, depression, even PTSD.
Yeah, I can see how that happens with all that manipulation and emotional abuse.
It takes its toll.
Yeah.
And the impact on self-esteem can be really bad.
Right, because you're constantly being criticized and put down and gaslighted.
He can leave you feeling completely worthless and unsure of yourself.
Like you can't trust your own judgment.
Exactly.
And like we discussed earlier, this can also affect your future relationships.
Right, because it creates this template for how you interact with people.
Right.
You might be drawn to the same patterns, or you might become really guarded and push everyone away.
You might. So it's almost like those past experiences create a blueprint that you follow. Even if it's not healthy.
Exactly. So it's important to be aware of these tendencies.
Right.
So you can break free.
So what's the takeaway here?
I think it's that healing is possible. It takes time and effort, but you can recover and build those loving and supportive relationships you deserve.
Yeah. So this article have one last thought-provoking perspective on narcissism that I want to bring up.
Okay.
It goes beyond just those personal relationships.
Okay.
And looks at leadership.
Interesting.
Can narcissism actually be a force for good?
That's a great question.
It is?
And the article brings up some famous figures throughout history who displayed narcissistic traits.
Like who?
So we're talking about people like Alexander the Great, Napoleon, even Hitler.
Oh, wow.
They were all complex individuals, but you can't deny their impact on history.
No, you can't.
What's interesting is that some of the qualities we see in narcissists, like ambition, self-belief, the willingness to break the rules, these can also be the things that drive innovation and progress.
So like leaders like Steve Jobs or Elon Musk.
Yeah, they changed entire industries with their vision.
So it's a double-edged sword.
It is.
It can lead to great things, but also has that destructive potential.
That's the key.
Yeah.
You know, narcissistic leaders can inspire and motivate people and achieve amazing things.
Right.
But the article reminds us that there's a dark side.
Okay.
Their charisma can be used to manipulate.
Right.
And their belief in themselves can blind them to other people's needs.
And they use Hitler as an example of that.
Exactly.
Wow. So the lesson is about finding balance.
It is.
Like leadership needs a combination of confidence and compassion.
Absolutely. It's about using your influence to help others, not just yourself.
Okay. This has been a fascinating look
at
narcissistic behavior.
We've seen how it shows up in relationships, families, even on a global scale.
We really have.
Yeah.
What are some of the key takeaways you hope people listening will get from this?
I think the main thing is that knowledge is power.
Okay.
When you understand narcissistic behavior, you can protect yourself from it.
Right. We've seen that it's more than just vanity or being self-centered.
Right. It comes from a deep need for validation.
Yeah. And it's influenced by so many things.
It is.
It's not just one thing that causes this.
Yes.
The part about the effects on relationships and families was really powerful.
Yeah, because it shows you how destructive it can be.
It really does.
Yeah.
But there is hope.
There is.
Right? Like we can set boundaries.
We can
prioritize self-care.
Exactly.
And start to heal.
You can recover and build healthy relationships.
Exactly. So you've gotten a good understanding
Yeah.
of narcissistic behavior. You've seen how it plays out in all these different areas of life.
Yes.
But now it's up to you to take this knowledge and use it in your own life.
Absolutely.
Start recognizing those red flags, set boundaries, and always prioritize your own well-being.
Put yourself first. So remember the next time you meet someone who seems self-absorbed and doesn't care about other people's feelings.
Right.
Think back to what we talked about.
Yeah. Recognizing those patterns is so important.
It is the first step to protecting yourself.
And building healthier relationships.
Exactly.